want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into today's hopefully short webinar. I wanted to give this opportunity for us to go over the 2020 Community Action Plan that hopefully all of you have now seen. I sent it out pretty early on Monday morning along with some attachments for this year's plan. So hopefully you've had a chance to scroll through some of it, maybe mark off where you have questions, but if not, I'll try to go through some of it today. And if you have questions that come up, feel free to post those either in the question comment section, and I will address those for the group, or if we can figure out this mute unmute system, and you can just go ahead and pop off your questions. So without any further ado, I'll just go right into this year's Community Action Plan template. It should hopefully look pretty similar to what you've seen last year. In fact, it should look almost exactly the same in the first couple of pages. We use the same format structure of last year's plan. So again, shouldn't look too different. Just want to note on this page, it does give the due date for the completed plan, which is Monday, November 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure that you're able to send it back by then. If that's going to be an issue for whatever reason, let us know very early so we can start to work on that with you. But I'll just go ahead and keep scrolling. I'm going to try not to just read off everything to you all since you can read, but I do want to point out how the structure of this year's plan changed. So if you remember from last year's plan, it was pretty concise and just had some questions, but a lot of the questions from last year were looking backwards. We're asking a lot of what have you done or what did you do in 2018. Whereas I view this, since it's a plan, it should be looking forward. However, we do still have some questions we have to ask every year that do look backwards, either for our own reporting requirements to OCS or for any risk assessments that we might have to do on agencies. So I broke it up this year into the 2019 Community Action Report. So these are the questions that we're going to ask that are looking backwards and ask, what did you do this last year? Or maybe what do you do in general? And a lot of those questions will be very familiar or very similar to what we did last year. And then the second section is the actual plan section. So this is asking, what are you going to do in 2020 looking forward? So most of these are going to be narrative-based questions. Again, things that we're going to have to pull for our reporting or maybe for our state plan that we're going to have to be updating next year for fiscal year 2021 and 2022, hopefully. So yeah, so I'll just keep on moving forward. This is where you start to see a lot of the questions, all the questions that are for 2019. So it's asking, you know, how many employees do you have in your agency? Last year, some agencies missed this question in the plan. I don't think it was highlighted very well, so I don't blame you for missing it when you were scrolling through, but just make sure that you answer this question this year. But yeah, so the rest of these are going to be narrative. So this is what I did want to point out for everyone in case you're wondering why we're asking some of these questions if we didn't last year and previous years. There usually are very specific reasons. The first one being that it's something that's called out specifically in the CSBG Act. And so I tried to identify each of these questions with a specific section of the Act. So I'm pretty confident I got most of them correct. There might be one or two where if you look back at the Act, you don't see as clear connection with the question. But I gave it an attempt, and also because all of these questions are things that we have to answer, as I mentioned, in our annual report. So if you read these and you're asking, why the heck do we need to know this? I try to give a reason or an answer to that question for almost everything in both the plan, in both the report and the plan section of this template. So anything that doesn't have these italicized sentences to show where the questions are coming from are questions that are going to be related to monitoring. So such as board vacancies, that's, I mean, there are sections in the CSBG Act that we could tie that to, but really that's something that Steve St. John is interested in and that he wants to keep tabs on with agencies on a yearly basis. So anything that doesn't have that italicized They're most likely related either to monitoring, or there's 1 or 2 extra things that we've thrown in here. But so as you can see, when we ask about CSBG required services or referrals, we're referring specifically to the assurances within the CSBG Act. So I'll just keep going. Again, I don't want to read to you guys. I'm sure you can go through this and read it for yourself. All right, so are there any questions on that first section? Let's go ahead and stop before we get into the forward-looking questions. Any questions about anything that we're requesting or asking about what you've done in 2019? Or some of them are phrased specifically, what did you do in 2019? Some of them are more broad, just do you, I think like the service-based questions, do you provide these services just in general? But if you have any questions about those, feel free to throw them up. I'll try and get to them pretty quickly. And if not, I will go ahead and keep going through the actual plan portion of the community action plan. So all of these should be phrased in a way that's asking, what are you going to do in 2020? So we're really looking at like January to December of 2020. And again, I tried to relate specifically to a portion of the CSBG Act. So you know why the heck we are asking you all these questions. And if not to the Act, then to either a state plan question that we'll have to answer next year, or to the report that we'll have to put in with the annual report. So partnerships and linkages definitely figure pretty heavily in this. There's an entire section of the annual report and the state plan that we have to devote to. So we want to make sure that we're getting good information from you all, since that's what a lot of what we have to report on is making sure that you all are forming linkages and partnerships. Oops, that should say gaps. So that's a spelling error on my end. So linkages to fill service gaps. Linkages to avoid duplication. These are all things specifically called out in the CSBG statute, and then questions that we have to answer in the state plan. Training needs, again, that's something that we had last year. This is something that we will be looking for. We're currently starting discussions with Inca about training for the 2020 year. So I'm hoping to get at least some of these in time for those discussions. And if not, then we'll definitely have them on hand for next year. So please devote some decent time and thought to this. I'm currently reviewing last year's to see if there are any priorities or training needs that several agencies suggested that weren't covered in training in 2019. So I do actually use this. I find it very helpful. And for those that put a little bit of time and effort into it, was, I thought, very insightful and gave me some ideas for things that we could be doing in 2020. So try to throw up more than just a 1 or 2 word phrases in these answers. It can be really helpful, and I think interesting to see what's on everyone's mind and what's or the challenges everyone's facing that they'd like to get extra training on. All right, so this is maybe one of the, this is another change that you might notice. So we have the same budget table as we did last year, but we've condensed it down to administrative costs and direct program costs. And for the 2020 CSBG budget sheet that you'll have to fill out with your contracts, we will probably have the same table rather than breaking out equipment and professional services. We really just want to focus on what's going to be an administrative cost, what's going to be a direct program cost. That's how the statute, and really there's an IM specifically devoted to eligible costs for CSBG, and they focus on just those 2 categories. So to kind of keep things clear and clean, we have decided to go back to just focusing on those 2 types of costs. So that's why we have it in this year's plan. And then this is the second budget table is new to this year's plan, but should be familiar to you. It's the same table as what's used in Module 2 of the annual report. So we just kind of took inside and added it so that we could see maybe what is your expected costs for 2020, and then it'll be nice to compare that to what you actually end up reporting on for the 2020 year and early 2021. So again, it's the exact same table. I know it might look pretty different from what we asked for last year, a bit more detail, but it's exactly the same as what's asked for in Module 2. So more narrative questions, and then we're going to get into the attachments. So that's those first, 10, 11 pages are the bulk of the narrative section of your annual plan, the action plan. Are there any questions about that so far? And hopefully it's pretty straightforward. All right, seeing no questions, I'll keep moving forward. All right, so the attachments this year, last year we called them supplements, but this year just making them into a general attachments. Last year, if you remember, we asked for one attach or one supplement that was an Excel sheet that was 2 tabs. One tab was really kind of a practice for Module 3. We wanted to see if there was anything that folks could report on before we actually had to turn everything in for the 2018 annual report. And the first time you really had to turn in a Module 3 to the federal level. So we kept with that this year. So we're still going to have that as an attachment, but it's going to be its own separate attachment. And instead of having us send you a blank template, a general template for that, we've sent each organization a blank copy of their smart sheet, smart form, I can't remember what it's called, that the same one that you used when you turned in Module 3 for the annual report. And I'm doing that this year because when we did the training at INCA on the annual report, it sounded like some agencies weren't aware of all of the functions that are within that smart sheet or that smart form for Module 3. So to kind of help get agencies more familiar with how to use those, I just want to use the exact same form. So hopefully you got that email from me. I sent an individual email to each organization with their blank copy of Module 3. If you didn't get that, or if you did get that but you're like missing it, but you still have your blank copy from earlier this year when we originally sent those out as Module 3s, you can use that too. It's just that blank form. So we're asking for anyone that is doing community level work to turn that in. It is a requirement for those agencies, but if you are not doing community level work, you do not need to turn in this attachment. The one attachment that is not a requirement for all agencies. And again, that goes back to how Module 3 is treated. Module 3 is not a requirement. I've been hearing that from NASCAST and from OCS directly, that it is not a requirement. I don't think there's a plan, it sounds like, to make it a requirement. So if you really don't think that your agency is doing community level work, do not feel pressured to fill this in with trying to make an individual or family level program into something that could fit into Module 3. If you're not sure, feel free to reach out to me, to Vita and I, and we will talk you through some of that, or maybe even we can bring in NASCAST into that conversation. That's one of the reasons I'm excited to have everyone fill out, or have those that are interested fill out a Module 3 as part of their action plan, so we can start to tease out some of those questions and answers before we actually have to do the next report. And I'm hoping NASCAST will maybe have a little bit more time to devote to any questions we send them now, rather than in February and March when everyone's having to work on Module 3s. So that's kind of my plan, my hope. And I do see a question, so I'm gonna try and get to that. Okay, on number 5 of the status form of Module 3, we cannot select a specific issue community names. Okay, so let me try and pull up Module 3 from to see if I can see where that issue is, and there's another issue someone is pointing out. So we'll see if I can. It's the one section I didn't already pull up. All right, so I'm just going to pull up a blank version of Area 5's Module 3. Doesn't have any of their information on it other than their DUNS number, so this should be okay if my computer works properly. Okay. And I do already see it might not be working properly while I have the webinar system up. Let me pull up another one. Okay, oh, here we go. So I need to enable editing when I pull one up, and I need to enable content. So make sure that you have both questions pop up at the top of your Excel sheet. That's going to allow some of the functions of the smart sheet, smart form, I can't remember which one it is, to actually work properly. And let's see if it works on this one. All right, do I want to make this a trusted document? Yes. Again, you have to answer all these questions in order to do the functions that you need to do on here. All right, so the questions I was getting. All right, so on number 5, you're having an issue. So I think someone has mentioned that they've had an issue selecting the domains under this question 5. I'm pretty sure if you're having issues with that, that might be because you weren't able to answer all of those questions that I just mentioned. Make sure that you enable editing on your form, and make sure you enable content on your form, and then make sure that you say, yes, it's a trusted document. I believe all of those need to be answered before the actual functions of this sheet are allowed to work. If you don't see those questions when you pull up your smart sheet, I need to figure out which one this is. When you pull up your module 3, email me or email Vita, email one of us, and we can try and figure out what's going on. Maybe we need to get you a new form, or maybe there's a setting on your computers related to your security that is not letting those functions work, but you should be able to click on these domains, and then I believe these domains are what allows you to work on functions below. So let's say I want to start with no domain. So you can see at the bottom, all of those extra tabs went away. I have to click on one of these issues in order for this tab to show up, which is related to your NPIs. And your NPIs first need to be addressed with strategies. So make sure there's a lot of different functions to this form. If you click on a question and nothing is happening, the function isn't working probably, most likely. So again, contact us if you're having that issue. You should, when you're answering the question about strategies, so I've clicked on that housing was a domain that we are working on. So it's listed as a possible list of strategies. So let's say my community initiative is doing these first 4 strategies. I'm going to hit OK. And then when I go to housing, those MPIs should pop up. And again, some of these functions might not be working. I think the webinar system is messing with a little bit with some of these, but so I believe, if I remember correctly, that is how that should work. So initiative name is a narrative. Initiative year is a pop-up, so you're going to choose how many years or what year your initiative is in. This narrative, you're going to edit over on the side. Goal agenda is another narrative you edit on the side. The issue domains you click on down, and which will allow these tabs to pop up. Partners is another narrative. And then strategies should then allow the NPIs to pop up on here. For some reason, that's not working on right now. So again, if you have issues with any of these functions, such as what I'm experiencing right now, go ahead and email us and we will try and make sure that these get corrected. I want to make sure that we are accessing all of these forms, again, especially before we have to deal with this with the next annual report. So I do believe there were some instances where agencies were not able to fill in maybe strategies or domains, and that can have a really big impact on your overall report for your community initiative. So the only other thing I'll say about this now is that anything that is narrative related, since this is most likely going to be an update for a lot of you, so for those of you who turned in a community initiative, some might come back as not being a community initiative. We haven't heard back from OCS about their review of any of the annual report. But if you do end up where what you're doing is a community initiative and you want to submit another report in 2019 and you'll be doing it again in 2020, this is going to basically be providing a lot of the same information that you will probably be reporting on in 2019. It's just to give us an update on where you're at currently. And then with anything that is narrative based, especially in lessons learned, impact of outcomes, I'd say would be the other one. Please call out that the things that you have seen, that you expect to see, maybe the things that you expect to work on. So this could also maybe relate to goal agenda. Please call out that in 2020, we will do X. We will endeavor to achieve this. We expect to see this. Again, since this is the community action plan and it's really meant to be you all setting goals for the coming year, I do want to see at least a little bit of that in module 3 if possible. It can get a little bit dicey because these are usually multi-year initiatives and it's not set up in a way that can easily call out each year of the initiative. It seems like OCS really wants just an overall kind of update on how the program is going, maybe not partitioned by year. I do want to see a little bit of that for this 2020 action plan. So again, maybe just a sentence or two in some of the narrative sections stating that, you know, this was our original goal agenda. This is what we've accomplished so far. In 2020, we will do this part of our plan to see, you know, maybe these results in the coming year. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, go ahead and shoot me a question, either here or again, you can always reach out via email or phone to myself or Vita if needed. So again, reach out to us if you need anything in regards to the function of these module 3s. Like even I've been running into issues, so we can definitely try and figure that out. And then if you have any questions about how to answer some of these questions, I'd love to answer those now and really try to get some really strong reporting going before the annual report. So that's one attachment. The other attachment, this attachment 7. So this relates to module 4. We had this kind of in last year's action plan, but I think it looked a lot different from the annual report. And again, I'm trying to make it so that everything we are doing especially when it comes to these metrics, relates to the annual report. So in the annual report, you do have to, one of the columns when you are reporting on NPIs, you are supposed to have set targets for your year. So I think in the annual report, it's that what was your target for the year? What were your actual results? What were your outcomes? Yada, yada. So these actual results from 2018, I want to see the results from 2018, your estimated results for 2019, and then your target for 2020. So I want to see some change over time, see if, you know, your goal, your accomplishments or what you've achieved and your goals, are they aligning? Are you increasing your goal? Were your outcomes lower than expected? Things of that nature just over time. This first column, actual results 2018, you should be able to just copy and paste from your module 4 from the annual report you just submitted. Again, I'm trying to make this as close to the annual report as possible, and I'm also trying not to create a whole lot of work for you and your staff. So here you go. Here's 1/3 of several of these tabs that is just copying and pasting from the report that you just submitted. So the ones you'll have to really focus on are the estimated results for 2019, which you will be doing your final report on probably in February, March this coming year. So I'm hoping this will just be a good opportunity for you and your staff to review for that and see where you think your numbers might land for 2019. And then based on maybe those two numbers, setting targets for 2020. So those are your NPIs. And then we also are asking for your estimated unduplicated number of individuals that you will serve, the individuals to be served in 2020. In the annual report, it just asks for a number, how many did you serve in this last year? So we are asking, how many do you think you are going to serve with all of these types of programs? So similar to the annual report, you don't have to fill in all of these. We don't expect that you are doing all of these, but just fill in the ones that relate to your programs. So, and that's it. So again, hopefully this looks uber familiar, not from last year's action plan, but from the annual report. I'm hoping that they speak to each other a little bit more this year so that when you are setting these goals in 2020, when you're doing the annual report in 2020 or for 2020, probably at the beginning of 2021, we can then do a much easier comparison to see, well, where did you land in regards to your goals, to your targets, to your expectations. So any questions on these attachments? Seeing none, I will keep moving forward. Again, if anything comes up later, if you have any issues using any of the tools, or you're not sure how to answer anything, feel free and reach out. Oh, the one thing I do want to mention, should mention, with this attachment that relates to Module 4, we added a page that is not related to Module 4. We've asked in previous years in action plans, not in 2019's action plan, but before that we had been asking for just a list of your programs, and so we're asking for that again. And the way that we have set that up is that you label your programs by category, and the categories relate to 2Gen and Aspen Institute's 5 key components of 2-generation programming. Please don't spend a whole lot of time on this or trying to figure out which one your program falls under. Hopefully most of your programs will obviously fall under one. If they fall under multiple, feel free to just choose one. If you're not really certain, just go ahead and throw it under one. We do have an other if you really don't think any of your programs fall under one of these categories. But we just want to see, one, we need a full list of everyone's services so that when we get random questions about who does Head Start, who does tax, programs that help people file their taxes, anything to do with the elderly. Sometimes we'll get those questions from someone at the lieutenant governor's or governor's office, legislators. Sometimes Kylie and Jake just want to know. So we need a list that we can pull from so we can start to see who does what. And we'd like to start thinking about it in a 2-generation kind of framework or mindset. So again, don't spend a whole lot of time on this. Just throw up all your programs so we can see what y'all are doing. So that's the one section of this attachment that is not related to Module 4. So, nope, see a question. For overall statewide consistency, where would you categorize EAP? Ooh, that's a good question. I would have to review. We do have a link on here about the 5 key components. I will probably go back and review that and see if there's one that I think fits particularly well, and I will put that out since most of you all do EAP. That's a good question to make sure that everyone's putting it under the same category. So thank you, great question. And I might see if I can figure out some of the other programs. Early childhood education, that would be Head Start for those that do that. I might look at weatherization, since a lot of agencies do that, and see if I can just give out some guidance on the very common programs that I know a lot of agencies do. But all right, great question, thank you for that. All right, so moving on, we're almost there, I promise. All right, so we've got some information. Again, we're just looking for updated contact information, same as always. And then here's our explanation of all of the attachments. So attachment 1, board matrix, you had to turn that in last year, but this year we are asking for each board member to have their sector identified. So this is kind of going to be a combination of your board matrix, which is like your board attendance calendar, along with the breakdown of each sector. We're combining those again. This is Steve St. John is interested in seeing those. So this is for monitoring necessities. Attachment 2. So one of the attachments that we've provided, your board matrix, you can just give us in whatever format you normally give us, as long as it is sector for each member is included. The training, I did come up with a document. This was based on one that someone turned in last year that I really liked, so I'm copying from them. And so we're just asking that you put down the name of the training that you or your staff or your volunteers or your board members attended, when that was hosted, how many of your folks attended, and then who all was included in that. Was it just your staff? Do you have volunteers there? Did you have your board members there? I kind of like that breakdown to see who is sending who to which training. So, and we have it broken down. So if you attended ones that were provided specifically by Inca for CSBG related issues, you can put those here. And then if you did go to CSBG related trainings that weren't provided by Inca, we would also like to see those. And again, just give us the title, when it was provided, and how many of your people ended up attending. So pretty similar to last year, but last year I think we left it open to whatever format you wanted to give us. I like having consistency, and also I like having this breakdown to make sure we get all the same information from everyone. So that's an attachment. It's in a folder that you should have been sent a link to, and it's also listed on IHCDA's CSBG webpage. Both the action plan and the folder for attachments is there. It should be okay to find. If you have difficulties finding anything, please let us know so we can correct that. So that's another attachment. Next one is your strategic scorecard. Again, whatever you are turning in for your car monitorings, go ahead and attach that. Ooh, I see a question. Where do you want CSBG training from August? So the CSBG training that was done by Inca, put that under Inca. So here, I'll go ahead and pull up that document again. Maybe I need to explain it a little bit better. Oh, you guys are going to see our CSBG folders. No biggie. All right, so the training. So this one on top, the Inca, that is anything that Inca's provided that is related to CSBG. So if you went to a CSBG related training that Inca provided, please put that up there. And then anything else that was CSBG related that wasn't done by Inca. You know, so if you went to like the annual conference maybe in Chicago, you can put that there. If you were doing something, you know, if you had training that you was maybe recommended by Steve as part of a monitoring that you went to specifically, it wasn't something Inca provided, but you wanted to address it to maybe address some of the any deficiencies in your car score, you can put those here. And it really should have been anything that was paid for with CSBG funding. Again, that wasn't done by Inca, can go here. Anything that was done by Inca goes here. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you have a question about this, if you have a question maybe about a particular training, go ahead and shoot that over to me and I can direct you to which page I'd prefer to see that under. But yeah, so basically anything Inca, first page. And that's because we provide that funding, so we want to see who is taking advantage of that by agency. And then if there's things that you guys are taking advantage of that, you know, we're not maybe aware of, but should be just based on if it's a really good training, something that we could see other agencies benefiting from, we want to start to see that as well. So, okay, so hopefully that clarifies a little bit. Again, if not, feel free to reach back out. Okay, so that was that attachment. Next one is your scorecard. This year, we are not requesting your full strategic plan. As was made clear during one of the committee meetings, there wasn't a lot that us program staff could do with your strategic plan. Steve St. John, our wonderful monitor, he reviews those when he monitors, when he does the full monitor. He's not going to look at those on a yearly basis. And as program staff, myself and Vita, since we are not the monitoring gurus, we do not have the capacity or the skills to be able to review those and tell you if you are within, you know, if they're meeting CAR requirements. So, but we do still want to see your any updates on that, how you're doing with meeting some of your strategic goals from that. So we still want to see your scorecard, but you don't have to send us your full strategic plan like last year. And similar to last year, we want to see a cost allocation plan. We want to see your current one, so whichever one that you are using right now or will be in 2020, whichever year that you are falling on. When you turn this in, just give us your most current cost allocation plan. In both attachment 3 and 4, similar to 1, just send it to us in whatever form or format that you normally send or present to IHCDA. The rest of the attachments are all documents that we are providing. So the organizational standard self-assessment, we did have that last year as part of the action plan. I pulled that out because it made up a fairly large chunk of the action plan. But this is really for your benefit. I mean, we take a look at these and see where people say that they're struggling. But when Steve St. John, he will really take a close look at this again when he does his own monitoring. So this is for your this is for you to see if there's anything that you are maybe missing currently that you could try to fix before you do get a full monitoring in the next couple of years. So it is still required as part of the action plan. We'll go ahead and review these, see if there's something that a lot of folks say that they're struggling on. Maybe we can include that as part of the training for the upcoming year. But since it wasn't really related to the question of what are you going to be doing in 2020, I pulled it out as its own separate attachment. So that is attachment 5. Attachment 6, attachment 7, those are the modules 3 and 4 that we just went over previously. And then the certification of information is the last attachment. I do have a question. All right, I'll address that in a second. I just want to get through this last attachment. And so the certification of information, again, that was the same as what was provided last year. It's the exact same page, just for the 2020 action plan, where your executive director for the organization needs to sign. The reason this was pulled out as a separate attachment is that when you complete the 2020 action plan, please save it and send it as a Word or PDF that was saved. Please don't print this out and scan it back in. When you do that, it makes it so that we can't do searches within your document, and I really value being able to search for certain things. I also like having a very clear screen. Sometimes scans can muddy the view of the document. So that's why I wanted this to be something that you can fill something in, save it, and that's what I'll see as a reviewer. So the certification of information should be one of the only things that you actually have to print out and sign. The other things you might need to do that for is your matrix. If you keep that printed out and you just want to scan that in, I could see some doing that. If your cost allocation plan, I don't know, sometimes we see scanned documents that I would expect to see just as saved. So if those need to be scanned and sent to us, that's fine. But the bulk of the things that you're turning in, such as the main community action plan template, I really just want this filled in and saved as a Word document, or if it need to save it as a PDF, that's fine. Please don't scan this. It just makes my life a lot easier. And then when you turn everything into us, please keep them separate. Don't combine everything as your one action plan. Please turn in your action plan with attachments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, that's going to make it a lot easier for us to review everything. If we need to pull certain things together, such as the training reviews that everyone did from this last year, we might need to just look all look at those all at once, and that's so much easier to do when they're saved as separate documents. I know last year it seemed like because the certification of information was at the end of the community action plan, that everyone, a couple of agencies printed out the full document and scanned it in with the attachments and turned it all in as one document. And I know that might be easiest when it comes to emailing, but for reviewing purposes, it made it quite difficult. So that's why the certificate of information is separate. So you can just print and scan that out. And hopefully that will save you a little bit on printing, so you don't have to print out your entire action plan to send us. So that is all I have for that. I do want to see there's a question related back to the trainings. So for those trainings, so the question is if they attended Inca trainings but didn't use CSBG funds for those, partially because you all don't get a ton of admin for CSBG, and what you do get you put towards other things. So yes, if you did attend Inca trainings, I would say anything from Inca that wasn't like weatherization related. I know that's the other big training that some of your agencies might attend for them. Anything that they put on that wasn't weatherization, put it on that first page of the training. Even if you used other funds, you know, if you went to that CSBG annual report, but you paid it out of your general fund or some other fund, go ahead and put that on the first page of this Inca provided trainings, and then anything that wasn't Inca provided that relates to CSBG. I expect a lot of those would be paid for with CSBG dollars, but if you did go to something CSBG related and you paid for it with other funds, go ahead and put those down here. Again, we just want to see what everyone is attending as relates to CSBG. If there's anything that maybe we can steal for next year. All right. I think that's all the questions I've received so far. As I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at some of the common programs that you all run, such as EAP, weatherization, and see where to categorize those with the attachment that relates to Module 4. Otherwise, if you have any other questions related to how to answer any of the questions that we have in the action plan, related to whether or not you're doing a community initiative, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. You have a little under now 2 months to complete this, so hopefully that will be enough time for you to gather the information you need, and then if you need any of our assistance, hopefully we won't be pressed for time at any point. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that should be it. Since I see no other questions and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, I will go ahead and close today's webinar. Again, thank you for attending this and for paying attention to what's on the community action plan. I will probably go ahead and post this webinar. It should have been recorded to the CSBG webpage on IHCDA's website. If you haven't been on that recently, I do recommend checking that out. I made quite a few updates to it to make the information that you might need a lot easier to find. So including this, the action plan is one of the top things on the page. So you can access the template, you can access the attachments, and then I'll also post this recording to that as well. So if you or any of your staff need to review anything, feel free. All right, so that should be it. Again, thank you all for joining me today, and I look forward to hearing from you and reading all of your action plans.